Since their proliferation in the 70s, stories of near-death experiences have gripped the attention of millions. Numerous books have been published over the years, and many bestsellers. On a number of them is the name of a writer who's dedicated much of his life to documenting near-death experiences and other supernatural phenomena. Paul Perry says there's a vacuum in the media of a topic that's important to everyone, whether they know it or not. I'm Sue Biamba, and this is Mysteries of Life. A unique peace rests on these dusty Arizona landscapes. Sometimes I'm stunned by the beauty that suddenly emerges in these remote locations that can seem cold and spiritless at times. I'm on my way to meet Paul Perry, a writer and a filmmaker who makes an effort to bring out the spiritual through his work.
And when I went to Egypt, follow the trail of Jesus through Egypt, I went to a lot of areas that have had visions, and some of them quite profound. And I happened to snap this photo of this ball of light over the church.
The photograph he took clearly shows a spray of light coming down from the heavens directly over the steeple of St. Mark's Church. When the photo was shown to passers-by, few were surprised at what they call the lights of the Virgin Mary. The people of Asut are accustomed to seeing the lights of St. Mary, says Father Zaka. She gives us a message from heaven that Jesus and the Virgin Mary are always with us.
This is just one of Paul's documentaries called Visions and Miracles. Jesus in Egypt is another. The Bible doesn't say much about his time in Egypt as a child. Paul made the documentary based on his book, which explores the remote history of the Holy Family's time on Egyptian land.
It is here in the church in Saka, where many important Christian relics can be found. Paul hopes to find the famous footprint of Jesus.
I was actually amazed that the priest handed this footprint to me. This is one of the most revered relics in Christianity. Yet there I was, standing in the middle of the church, frightened out of my wits that I was going to drop this footprint. And then
this amazing stone measures about 31 inches long. The footprint of our Lord is about 1/2 inch deep. The Lord's footprint is easy to see. The stone has grown darker here because of the sacred oil we have rubbed into this footprint for hundreds of years. It is very holy.
The stone was buried in medieval times when church authorities feared it would be stolen by disbelievers. To ensure it would not be destroyed if discovered by Muslims, church leaders inscribed the back with the name of Allah.
we got a map from Pope Shenouda, who's the Pope of the Coptic Church in Egypt, and we followed that map. It was also right after 9/11, and it was interesting to see how the impression of Middle Easterners was in reality as opposed to the way they were cast in news. You know, and I think news always covers action and they cover the violence and things like that, but most of the world isn't violent. And most of the world has just people who just want to live and have a good time. And that's what we found, a very open society.
With over a dozen books published, he's co-authored several New York Times bestsellers, all having to do with the supernatural, near-death experiences, also known as NDEs. What some NDers experience can be described as miraculous. Take the case of Lupita Kirkland, whom Paul interviewed for his 2011 documentary on NDEs called Afterlife. As a child, she accidentally ran into a sliding glass door, breaking it with glass shards, severely cutting her body.
I saw a lot of blood. I realized that I was gonna die. So I told my dad, "Dad, I'm going to die today." So I saw my body in the distance, and I was like in the room, and I had the vision of my mom getting the doctor, and as she was screaming and crying, and I felt sorry for her. I wanted to console her and let her know that I was okay. Even though I was afraid at the first moment when I was detached from my body, an overwhelming sense of peace came all over me, and I knew I was okay, that I was going back home, and I wanted to share that with my parents, that I was okay, but I couldn't talk to them anymore, and I saw my dead body just laying there. I saw the tunnel. It seemed to be made of dark clouds. At the end of the tunnel, there was a light. At the end of that light, I saw the image of what I believe is Virgin Mary, and I was reviewing my life with her, and we spoke about my mission in life. And after that, we had spoken about me coming back, because I realized that my mission was not complete and that I needed to go back. So finally, I was pulled back, like with this reaction, you know, and I felt how my soul entered into my body.
Did you notice how what I believe was the Virgin Mary? It's because most of the people will see a person of light, or they'll just see a light field, and they don't see an actual Virgin of Mary, but they're putting their cultural upbringing on it, I think, for the most part. They'll say, I saw God, but then they can't describe him.
Lupita says she was able to verify what she saw during her out-of-body experience with her mom. For instance, she told her mom that the doctor met her on the 3rd floor of the building, which Lupita could not have known unless she had seen it.
How has this affected your life in the intervening years?
I didn't come back the same. I was a different person. I was more spiritual, and also I became a more compassionate person, concerned for others, and feeling a sense of love.
Why do you think it's important to know the validity of this experience?
I think people have a deep fear of death, you know, without a question. And to know what happens, to know that possibly, a high possibility actually, to know that that consciousness survives death is eye-opening to a lot of people. And to know that there's actually science on it, because people tend to trust science. There's actually science that looks into this. And so I think that's the main thing. I think it's very soothing to people. It's a good tool for discussing grief.
The topics that you explore are very unique. History, spirituality, humankind. What inspired you to explore these topics?
I think if you look at the media, most of the streaming media, there's a lot of vacuums, a lot of things they don't cover. And I think one of the things is spirituality. I'm not really that interested in structured religion, but I'm interested in the basis of religion, which is this undefinable thing called spirituality. There's just not enough about spirituality in the media.
Can you tell us some of the letters or comments that you got from your audiences, how they impacted them?
Well, some of the letters and comments you get are from people who think you're anti-Christian, and you're trying to destroy the Christian faith, or you're working as an agent of the devil. Most of the time, you get really wonderful letters from people who felt that their death anxiety had been soothed by reading these books, or seeing the movies, or that they want to tell their own story. And so we'll get letters that just are people telling their stories. And I did a book years ago with a guy named Daniel Brinkley, and it really took off. And it was made into a movie. And Daniel lives in Aiken, South Carolina. And I went over to his house one time, and he had a 3-bedroom house. 2 of the bedrooms were completely full of boxes of letters that people had given him. I mean, there's that much interest in this and that many people who reach out, generally very thankfully.
That book was Saved by the Light, a 2008 New York Times bestseller. In it, Danyan shares his NDEs. He says he was killed by lightning, triggering his first near-death experience, during which he met 13 angels and was given over 117 revelations about the future. At least 100 have come true since, he says. According to his author page, the book has sold over 20 million copies worldwide. But as you might expect, claims of this magnitude are met with reasonable and unreasonable skepticism. Paul takes a journalistic approach.
No matter how much work I've done on this, and this is true, I think, of everybody else who works in this field, there's still a question at the end. Does consciousness survive? Does it survive long term, or does it just survive a few more minutes more?
And not everyone is a believer in life after death, which Paul shows in his work.
I think nothing happens. I think, that's the cycle of life. People die and it's over with. I don't think there's any mystical ascension or anything of that sort.
I guess I won't be seeing him in heaven. That's where I'm going. So, yeah, that's what I think happens. You do go to heaven or hell, just depending on, I guess, what you did through life. So I guess I subscribe to the Christian point of view.
I think about the finality of it, and I think about that I don't want to think about it.
Well, I think when people die, it's just like candle is blown out. People die, and the spirit cannot exist without a body. That's my thought.
It was actually a skeptic who familiarized Paul to the topic of NDEs.
Yeah, this is a photo of Raymond here.
Not only that, he coined the term near-death experience, Dr. Raymond Moody.
What I think happens when we die is that we enter into another state of existence or another state of consciousness that is so extraordinarily different from the spatial and temporal frame of reality in which we exist in the physical world, that the language we have is not yet adequate to describe this other state of existence or consciousness.
Raymond is one of my best friends, without a doubt. And the real beauty of Raymond is that he doesn't come at things with a preset opinion. We'll sit down, we'll discuss things. I might have a different opinion from him, and he'll say, well, let's look at the validity of this, or look at the validity of that. How do you think the world would change if you were able to prove that there was an afterlife?
Many people get to thinking about this and they think, oh, if that were the case, then we'd all love each other and there would be nirvana and there wouldn't be any problems in the world. But I don't think it would bring people to a state of, complete love and make everybody saints and so on. I honestly don't accept that. But there is one thing that I am absolutely sure that a rational proof of life after death would do. And that would be that it would fundamentally alter the structure of the human mind. If we could have a rational proof of life after death, then human beings would never again be the same, because the entire structure of our cognitive mind would be expanded.
Dr. Moody wrote the 1975 bestseller Life After Life, which popularized modern near-death studies. Paul has co-authored 4 books with him, the first published in 1988.
When I work with Raymond, Raymond's always in a rocking chair because it really helps his thought process, his reasoning process. He always drinks Diet Cokes. So he'll have, sometimes in a good session where we're working all day, he'll drink as many as 20 or 30 Cokes.
And their work has expanded to other realms of spirituality, including past lives, also known as reincarnation and coming back. I had a chance to interview Dr. Moody about the topic.
Number one, very few people who have a near-death experience report any sort of vision of a next or the reincarnation during their near-death experience. However, it does occur And once in a while, you have someone say that in addition to this review of their life they have, people say that everything in their life appears around them in a panorama. They see everything they've ever done. And some people say in that connection, that they see connections between specific events in this life with those in apparent afterlife and in apparent past lives. So I've seen a number of people tell me that these connections they can see in this life review with events and circumstances that had happened in previous lives.
Where you see many more accounts of past lives is in the field of past life therapy. Dr. Moody and Paul's book explores this practice. We've covered this as well in our interview with past life therapist Carol Bowman. But Dr. Moody has said that his kids led him to believe in reincarnation.
My son Carter is now 24, and he was adopted at birth. And when he was about 5 years old, he lying on the bed watching TV, and I was flipping through the channels. And I flipped through what turned out to be the National Geographic channel, whereupon Carter became very animated. He said, Dad, that's my village. Wow. So I turned it back, and it was the National Geographic channel. It was a documentary about village life in China. And when I went back, Carter was saying, yeah, Dad, that's my village. And he was acting as though I should remember that. But he could tell I was astonished. And he said, as though to orient me, he said, yeah, before I came to you and Mom, I was with my other mom and dad in China and my brothers and sisters, and I was still puzzled. And so then, as to orient me, he said, and then I was up in the trees looking at you and Mom lying down in the grass. And I knew exactly what he was talking about because before he was born, my wife and I were in Greece. I was lecturing there. We're on a tour. And so we were exhausted from the plane flight, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. And this was not a standard site. This was way away. And so the attendant at this site could tell that we were exhausted. So he said, just go over there and lie down in the grass and take a nap. And all around us, there were these big trees. And what we were talking about was adopting a baby. A similar thing happened with my daughter, Carol Ann, who is Native American by heritage. She's Blackfeet from Montana. But again, we adopted her at birth. When she was 9 years old, she and I were taking a walk. And there was this old wooden bridge. She liked to sit there and talk. And just out of nowhere, she said, I don't like this place. And it was plain she meant the world. And I was kind of startled. And I said, huh? And she said, yeah, she said, when you die, you just go up and you be with God, and he holds you there till all the people you know have died, and then he sends you back as another person. And I said, well, what makes you think that? And just like this, she went like this. I just know in my mind. And she said, and I was with God, and God pointed you out to me. And he said, you got to go down to be his daughter. And I said, well, how did you feel about that? And she said, oh, I didn't want to do it. She said, I wanted to stay with my God. But she said, he pushed me twice with her hand. But he pushed me down to be your daughter. So I said, well, are you glad you came anyway? And she said, oh, yeah, sure. This was particularly striking to me because my wife and I, we don't attend religious ceremonies, and we never took these kids to any sort of religion meetings or anything. And so the fact that they would just bring up this spontaneously was quite, astonishing to me.
These are interviews that I've done with Raymond for this book.
Paul and Dr. Moody's work continues today. Set to be released this September is a book that'll touch on a variety of spiritual phenomena. Proof of Life After Life, 7 Reasons to Believe There's an Afterlife. More on transforming light, mist, and muses when we return. Paul gave us a taste of some of the topics he'll explore alongside Dr. Moody in their next book.
One of them is out-of-body experiences. Another is precognitive experiences. A third one is transforming light, how the light transforms people during a near-death experience and how that's visible later on. Some people are healed by near-death experiences, which makes them a shared death experience. You can see the transformation in people. They're healed. They pick up what we call spontaneous muses, which means they literally, during a near-death experience, will pick up an angel that visits them later, sometimes at will. And then there's an interesting one called Light, Mist, and Music. That's one of our chapters. And what it deals with is a large number, not a large number, but quite a few doctors and nurses will see when someone dies, they'll see a mist come out of them, or they'll see a light that comes out of them, or parts of the room will light up, or music. They'll hear music, and it tends to be very angelic music that some people have spent years trying to recreate. The mist is amazing. For hundreds of years, that's been discussed among people who have been around the dying, and they'll see a mist. The same is true of lights, spontaneous lights. What they mean, no one knows. I mean, generally speaking, doctors who see it, nurses who see the mist, have a tendency to think that somehow represents the soul. And the descriptions of it are almost universal. It tends to be a greenish light, a white mist. And it tends to head for a portal that's high in a room and get sucked into that portal.
There's a possibility that the consciousness continues. Sending out this message to people, how do you think it will change their lives?
It's hope. I mean, the way it changes their life is hope. You know, people hope that grandma's still alive somewhere, that they're going to be there too. And there's a lot of indication that that's true. You know, but you can only, in honesty to people, you can only take it so far. But if you look at like this book we have coming out, for instance, I think for the most part you'll agree that consciousness survives. But you know, do we know what form it survives in? No. Do we know what God's plan is for us? No.
Some experts in near-death studies have drawn their conclusions about the afterlife, like Dr. Jeffrey Long, who's written a New York Times bestseller with Paul, Evidence of the Afterlife. While readers may feel spiritually touched by these books, the experts themselves say they're affected by what they find. Here's how Dr. Long put it in our previous interview.
I started out, if you will, like a skeptic. I'm a show-it-to-me kind of person. I'm a physician, and I make my decisions and understandings of life based on solid evidence. So when I started studying near-death experiences and realized all the lines of evidence all converging on the understanding that near-death experiences are, in a word, real, I was amazed. It's helped me as a physician understanding that for you, me, and every single person watching this video, all of us have a life after death, a wonderful life after death, and that's exciting. As a physician that treats cancer, that's helped me to treat my patients that have that life-threatening illness more courageously, more openly, more aware that even if they succumb to their cancer illness, it's not really the end. They're going to have an afterlife. They're going to go on living. So it's helped me to be a better doctor for my patients, more courageous, more willing and able to walk with people with these devastating diagnoses of cancer and simply do a better job.
How do you feel knowing that you are soothing people's fear of death?
It's a wonderful feeling, actually. I mean, you know, there's that belief that there's no accidents. And in many ways, I feel like that I was guided to this. That, you know, I met Raymond and I was just guided to continue to build on this field, to continue with the study of near-death experiences and other experiences.
I left Paul's home thinking about how media, be it books, film, and everything else, affect us. It also has the power to distract us, mislead us, and even suppress our spirituality, that undefinable thing, to use Paul's words.
It's like a Coptic priest said to me. He said, spirituality is like water. It's hard to define, but you know that you need it.
It's been great having you with us, and we hope to see you next time on Mysteries of Life.